night, customers asked me to deal cards again. It was cold. Both players played with hats on, duh. The victim, he plays whole time with his hand on locket at his neck. Then, last hand is done, but something terrible has happened, duh. That man flew at victim and is strangling him to death. Incidentally, who won the game? Isn't it obvious? The winner was the victim, Mr. Smith.
Objection!
That's ridiculous! Because Mr. White can't lose! Justice. Maybe you can come up with a more legitimate objection? But he hasn't lost in 7 years! Take it from me, kid. It happens. I didn't lose a case my first 7 years as prosecutor either. Incidentally, I have some evidence here. These are the poker chips as they lay at the very moment of the crime. The hand and chips on this side belong to the defendant, Mr. White. Those on the far side belong to the victim, Mr. Smith. Chips, you say? I mean, yes, imagine that poker is war. Your hand is your army, and the chips are your spoils. I know that. After all, in my youth, I was known as the poker head of courtroom number 3. I think he means poker face. Looking at this picture, it does seem that most of the chips are on the victim's side of the table. Very well. The defense may cross-examine the witness. That night, customer asked me to deal cards again. It was cold. Both players played with hats on, duh. The victim, he plays whole time with his hat on a locket at his neck. Then, last hand is done, but something terrible has happened, duh. That man flew at victim and is strangling him to death.
Objection!
Oh, really? Strangled, you say? That's odd. Normal customers only choke on burst. No, I mean, this report shows that the victim died of a blow to the head. Miss Orley, really now? Did you witness the crime? Looking at the picture, it doesn't seem like he was hit. He's still wearing his hat and everything. It is a fact that he was hit, Your Honor. Here's a photo we took of the victim with his hat off during our investigation. Well, that's quite shocking, isn't it? His head certainly was hit. But I've seen it happen. The defendant, he lunged at victim, his neck. Oh, really, Miss Orley? I think I've caught you in your own lie this time. Justice. I admire your enthusiasm, but perhaps you should think this through once more. What do you mean? I found a contradiction. There's one thing in her testimony that troubles me. Very well. It seems we should continue the cross-examination. There's such a thing as thinking too much. This horse is dead. Let's stop beating it. Such a thing as thinking out loud too much, too. At night, customer asked me to deal cards again. It was cold. Both players put with hats on. Duh. The victim he plays with whole time with his hands on lock at his neck.
Objection!
You know, there was one curious part in her testimony, just like Mr. Gavin said. But what does it mean? Mr. Justice, would you care to explain what it is you're thinking so intensely about? We'll call the testimony, Your Honor. The victim played with his hand on his neck. Locket on his neck, I believe she said. I hope you aren't about to raise an objection to the witness's grammar. No, but look at this photograph. Do you see a locket on the victim's neck? Well then, Justice, I'm impressed. I knew you'd be able to handle this. But what does it mean? If we are to believe this witness's testimony as is, then the locket disappeared following the victim's death. Lockets don't just disappear, Your Honor. It's quite simple when you think about it. If the locket is gone, someone must have taken it off, no? Taken it off? Wait, you don't mean the defendant wasn't strangling the victim at all? He was taking off his locket. Wouldn't that explain it? Ah! The defendant! What do you have to say to this? Say? Yes. I just noticed this, but you have something hanging around your neck, don't you? Oh, you mean this? Yes, it's a locket with a photograph inside. A photo of my daughter. You home again? So right, you have a daughter? We confirmed it at the time of the arrest. The picture in the locket is indeed Mr. White's daughter. So Mr. White has a locket too? Why don't I buy that this is just a coincidence? Well, now, if the results of this poker game led to the murder, perhaps we should hear a bit more about the outcome of the game. Further testimony won't really be necessary. It's clear that the defendant lost badly. Miss Orley, you will testify to the court about the game played between the victim and defendant. The game began with 3,500 points and chips for each man. House chips come in two sizes, small and large. The one who was winning, it was victim. The last hand, defendant played with all chips on table and lose. The moment loss was decided, defendant grabs bottle from table and... Indeed, looking at this picture, this seems to be a one-sided game. As the court knows, poker was the defendant's life. Failure must have been a bitter pill to swallow. How many times have I heard these words? I done it in a fit of anger, Your Honor, and now I regret what I done. A common tale, but true. Methinks the judge watches too many old court movies. Mr. Wright said he hasn't lost in 7 years, so this testimony must be wrong. The game began with 5,500 points and chips for each man. House chips come in two sizes, small and large.
Hold it!
Are the chips in this photo all the chips that were used? Of course. Something's fishy with these chips. Should I press harder? Maybe you can explain a bit about these chips. Explain? What is there to be explained? poker chips are poker chips. And not fish and chips. And a chip off the old block. And a motorcycle cop. Thanks! Now that I pressed her, I'd better ask something. Are these chips what? Are they in dollars or rubles even? These, as I've been saying before, it was game, not gambling. Hard, perhaps, for capitalists to understand. 2 types of chips, 100-point chips and 1,000-point chips. It's not money, da. Justice. Sir! Did you find her comment interesting? More ways than one, sir. I haven't added to her testimony myself. Well, does the defense want the witness to add to her testimony? Yes, I do think this deserves further scrutiny. Add it to the testimony. I guess I knew where I was going with this. Very well, witness, if you would be so kind. Your Honor. What kind of tip is worth 100 points? Other kind is worth 1,000. 2 kinds in all.
Objection!
Yes, sir, it was the victim who won. Absolutely, sir. Objection! It seems our new attorney is a bit confused. A glance at this picture does not show you who won. If you're not in kindergarten, just for safety's sake, could you explain the problem to the court? Of course, Your Honor. In this photo, I see small chips and I see large chips. Tell me, which were worth 1,000 points? Why, the big ones, of course, duh. Oh, I thought so too. But then the totals don't add up. The totals? Let's review what the witness told us. Each man started with 35,000 points in chips. And the combined total value of the tips was 7,000 points. Yes, if my calculations are correct, let's see. 3 plus 1, carry the 5. They are, Your Honor. Now, look at this photo that allegedly shows all the chips. If the big chips are worth 1,000 points and the small chips are worth 100, and you add them up, how much is it? Do it yourself. You aren't in kindergarten, are you? 10,600 points. The chips don't add up. This clearly contradicts the witness's testimony. Why? How could this be? Exactly, Justice. Now that you know the what, you must determine the why. Right! There's only one possible way to explain this contradiction. Each man began the game with 35,000 points. If all the tips were indeed shown in this photograph, then there can only be one answer. Well, what is it? The value of the chips was the other way around. What? Need to know what I think? The small chips were worth 1,000 points, not the big ones! Madness! Utter madness! Show me that photograph of the chips again. There were 6 small chips and 10 large chips. Why, it does make 7,000 points when you add them all up. Excellent work, Justice. It's almost as though you figured it out by yourself. Well, I'm just glad I was the one who said it. Alright! The value of the chips may be different, but that changes nothing! Indeed, the victim did have the large number of chips still. Ah! Exactly! If the small chips are 1,000 points and the large chips are 100, let's do a little math. Add up the points for each side of the table. Ah! The victim, Mr. Smith, had 29,000 points. And the defendant had 41,000 points. Well now, it seems that Mr. White was winning that night after all. That's impossible! My client had even less reason to kill the victim. After all, he was winning! Ah! Now, Mr. Orley, you must have known the true value of the chips, since you were there at the scene of the crime. Weren't you? Ah! Ah! Order, order! It appears our defendant has lost his motive. Mr. White's supposed defeat never happened. We must now ask ourselves whether we can trust. Hold it! Excuse me, what is it, Miss Orley? I do not want to be saying this, but actually, you see, see what, Miss Orley? What do we see? In the last hand, there was cheat. Cheat? You don't mean a trick? Wait, or do you mean a scam? They're all the same thing. Yes, there was cheat in last hand. That is why game ends with chips as they are. Great, just great. First we have lying, now cheating. Well, this case is taking a turn, but they're interesting. Witness, you will please testify to the court. Tell us about this cheating in the final hand. Last hand, both men had full house. There was 4 of each card in deck from ace to king. If you look at both men's hands, cheat is more obvious. The next moment, game becomes argument. The defendant's trick was exposed. He took bottle in his hand. Poor Mr. Smith. Miss Orley, why did you not tell the court about this from the very beginning? I thought I smelled a cover up here. Well, folks, it's time to throw back the covers. A full house is a very high-scoring hand. Not easy to make, in my experience. That alone is enough to suspect less than scrupulous tactics. Mr. Gavin? What's a full house? Lawyers these days, you don't know your poker? I can't say this bodes well for your case or career. What is this? Some kind of secret court poker ring? Justice. You know the terms 1 pair, 2 pair, and 3 of a kind, yes? Yeah, no problem. 2 cards with the same number make a pair, and 3 makes a 3 of a kind. Good. Now picks our hand with 1 pair and 1 3 of a kind. That's a full house. That doesn't sound very easy to make, does it? You can see each player's hand in this photo. Wow, they both have full houses. We forget, there's an easy way to make a full house and go undefeated for 7 years. You cheat. The defense may cross-examine the witness. Mr. White lost that hand? Who's ever heard of a professional con man losing when they cheat? That last hand, both men had full house. There is 4 of each card in deck from ace to king. If you look at both men's hand, cheat is more obvious.
Hold it!
How was it clear? Well, the defendant, he played a 5th ace. 5th ace? I still remember both hands very well. Mr. Smith's hand had 3 aces. And Mr. Lloyd's too. Obviously cheating was afoot, or perhaps I should say a hand. Perhaps this can be added to the testimony without Mr. Payne's joke? Very well. The witness witness will add this detail to her testimony, please. Mr. Smith's hand had 3 aces and Mr. White's 2. It is 5 aces in all.
Objection!
It appears the witness is mistaken. Mistaken? But my name... Look! This piece of evidence clearly contradicts what you said in your testimony. That's the photo of the chips, is it not? Justice? Perhaps you ought to explain your point in a way that the judge can comprehend. In other words, use your finger to point out your point. Yes, please point out the contradiction in this photo. What particular point contradicts the witness's testimony?
Take that!
Miss Orley, in your testimony you made the following claim. Mr. Smith's hand had 3 aces. But as you can clearly see, the victim's hand only had 2 aces. Ah! Well, maybe the witness was simply confused. Perhaps it was the defendant's hand that held the 3rd ace in question.
Objection!
Take another look at the evidence. As you can see, the defendant also had 2 aces in his hand. Where's the 5th ace? I see cheating, alright, and it's going on right here in this courtroom. 2 aces in each player's hand. Does make 4 aces in total. Hardly proof of cheating. Wait, please. It is true. I've seen it. The 5th ace. It was cheating, I swear to you. That's odd. She must be lying, yet she's the most sincere I've seen her all day. You're right to trust your instincts. Mr. Gavin? Who knows what lies in store for us to try our head? Your Honor, if I may, I have a suggestion. What might that be, Mr. Gavin? If you don't mind, perhaps we might examine the actual cards? Cards? Mr. Payne? Yes? The player's hands that night were set aside as evidence, were they not? The defense would like to request that the cards be shown to the court. Very well. The prosecution will submit this evidence. Which will you examine? The victim's cards or the defendant's cards? These cards don't prove cheating was going on. Nothing will. Now, which of these cards is more suspicious? It was the victim's hand that changed over the course of the witness's testimony. The defense requests time to examine Mr. Smith's cards. Very well. Mr. Payne, if you would. Very well. Well, time's a wasting. Get to it, Justice. Yes, sir! When examining evidence, be sure to view it from all sides and angles. Try using these buttons to turn it either which way and those buttons. That should give you a better perspective on the case. Okay, let's do this! What? Your Honor, look at this! One of the victim's cards! The back is a different color! Huh? Ah! That's impossible! But I put that card in White's hand! What was that, Miss Orley? No! I merely said her... Your Honor. Mr. Gavin, yes? Tell me, what is the easiest way to cheat at poker? To cheat? I'll tell you. One really needs a friend, a comrade, shall we say. The dealer. Wait, so you mean... This witness, Miss Orley. She's the cheater. A professional outrager. Ah! Order! Order! Focus, Justice. Time to take advantage of her. I mean, of her mistake. Your Honor, please recall the testimony we just heard. That's impossible. But I put that card in Wright's hand. Ergo, Miss Olga Orley conspired to cheat not with my client, but with the victim, Mr. Shotty Smith! Oh! Not only did she cheat, she cheated poorly. Therefore, it's not hard to imagine an altercation between her and the victim. What? Wait, you don't mean the defense isn't accusing the witness, Miss Olga Orley, are you? Time for justice. There were 3 people in the room at the time of the incident. And if Mr. Wright isn't guilty, that means I am. The defense accuses the witness, Mr. Olga Orley, of murder. Ah! Mr. Payne, where is your witness, Miss Olga Orley? It appears she had lost consciousness, Your Honor. Mr. Justice, Your Honor? It seems you presented a new possibility to the court. One suggests a contradiction between the witness and the victim, Mr. Smith. And that means this court cannot pronounce a verdict for the offense at this time. What? I did it! I held out! I see no point in prolonging the trial this day. The prosecution will need to make further inquiry.
Objection!
Mr. White? You can't end the trial here, Your Honor. Not yet. What nonsense is the defendant spewing now? Think. One of the cards had a different colored back. Don't you wonder what it means? What are you doing, Mr. White? Raise the objections right when you're about to get off the hook? Ridiculous! Mr. Payne, you of all people should know. Mr. White has a talent for the ridiculousness. Perhaps we should get to the bottom of things. Let's clear up the facts about the game that fateful night. As was said before, we alternate between 2 decks of cards that night. That was said before. The 2 decks at the club have different colored backs, blue and red. 1 color per deck. Why use different colored backs? If we use the same color, the 2 decks might get mixed. We use different colors and they still got mixed up? We used the red deck for the last game. I see. That's odd. For some reason, I had this impression that you were using the blue cards. Yeah, me too. I'm sure someone said something about blue cards. Whatever. In the end, 1 card of the 1 color got into the mix. Which means there was cheating. Yes, because the deck would seem to indicate cheating. Yet, this card raises 2 serious questions. Apollo. Yes? Let's consider the first question, shall we? Think, in the last game, when was the card swapped? When? There are 3 broad possibilities here. Could it have been swapped before the murder, during the murder, or after the murder? Well, yeah, thanks for the news bulletin, Mr. White. Of course it was Oh. Might be as simple as you think, Mr. Payne. It might not be. I'd like to hear what Apollo thinks first. When do you think the cards were swapped? When was the card swapped into the deck? Perhaps it happened after the murder. What's that? Ridiculous! Where's the point of cheating after the hand had been shown? That's silly!
Objection!
Yes, but tell me, how do you swap cards during the game? I'll take silly over impossible! Take it from me, son. There's a lot of silly in this world, but very little impossible. Oh? Even when the backs of the cards are a different color? If you pulled that during the game, you'd be caught in no time. Ah! Quite true. That would mean that the blue card in question was swapped after the hands were shown. After the murder. Okay, this is going past silly and straight on to crazy. I ask again, what's the point of cheating after the game's over? Who would do that? Who indeed? That's one of the mysteries before us. There's another? Yes, a simple yet decisive question must be asked. Who swapped the white card for a blue card? Who? The game and the murder is done. The victim is dead. Only two remain in the room, alive that is. The defendant, Phoenix White, and our witness, Olga Orley. Okay, so what is it that swapped the white card for blue? The one who swapped cards wasn't Mr. White, of course. And, well, it doesn't seem like it could have been Olga Orley either. What are you suggesting? That's hardly a logical conclusion, I'd admit. As a defense, I think it only makes sense for you to name Miss Orley at this point. Yes, I know. But she was the one who dealt the cards, right? I just can't believe she would make the mistake of swapping the wrong colored cards. And if the card was swapped during the game, it'd be obvious. Something you'd like to share of the cards, Mr. White? Oh, my apologies, Your Honor. I was just thinking how much fun all this is. Fun? How about confusing? I have no idea what the defense is claiming, Your Honor. If the one who swapped the card wasn't the defendant and it wasn't Miss Orley, then who was it? Yeah, well, it is the question, isn't it? Precisely. Huh? I believe we're about to see this case take a new direction. We'll find that indeed after the murder. Someone swapped one of the cards in the victim's hand. And that someone made two critical mistakes. And still you're going to tell us the first was swapping the wrong color card? Because the one who did the swap didn't know two colors of cards were being used. The other mistake was the number on the card. Why? The person replaced the fifth ace with a king. So whoever swapped it wasn't expecting there to be a fifth ace after all. All they knew was that the game had been won with a full house. So they picked up a king from the table and swapped it in. But there was one problem. According to our case record, this person doesn't exist. True, until now. But you have to admit the possibility of a fourth person. So it's more than a possibility. There was someone else there that night at the scene of the crime. What? I believe the judge spoke truthfully earlier. You do make trials ridiculous, Mr. Light. This trial has proceeded on one central assumption. Namely, that at the time of the incident, there were only 3 people in that room. I believe this new evidence, shall we say, overturns that assumption. You chose to conceal this information from the court. I suppose that is a problem, yes? Court is adjourned for a brief recess. Mr. Gavin, I see you in my chambers during this recess. Certainly, Your Honor. Very well. The trial will resume in 20 minutes. That was quite unexpected, Mr. White. To suddenly claim there was another person at the scene of the crime like that? I must ask, is it the truth? Well now, I think you know the answer to that. Being mysterious, sadly I have no time for mysteries. I only ask that you leave the defending to your defense in the future. Otherwise, I cannot guarantee the outcome. I see you haven't mellowed out one bit, Christoph. Justice. Yes, sir! The judge has summoned me to his chambers, so carry on without me. Did well, Apollo. Can I ask you something? Sir! That locket you wear, is that really yours, Mr. White? You're wondering about the victim's disappearing locket? Here, you can take a look at it. There's pics of my daughter in there. I'm surprised to hear you had a daughter. Most people are. Perhaps you'll meet her one of these days. One more question. The one who cheated that night. Was it you? What do you think? Huh? You know what happened 7 years ago? What I did? It's not unreasonable for you to think I might cheat. I never! Honest, but... It is odd that he managed to go undefeated for 7 whole years. Want to know something? There's only one game where you can be dealt bad cards all night and still win. Poker. Huh? You see, poker is all about reading your opponent. That way, it's a lot like a court case. Poker is like a trial law. Figure out what your opponent is thinking and you win. Well, yeah, but that's harder than it sounds. I think not. Try as they might to conceal it, everyone reveals their true thoughts in the end. The body language can become a valuable source of information. You're kidding! That witness, for instance, Miss Orley. She would touch the back of her neck during certain parts for testimony. Did you notice? No. Come on, who noticed that? Words, habits, choices. It's all information for the reading. That's the secret to winning, Apollo. Someone taught me. And now I pass that secret on to you. But I'm not worthy! I mean, there's no way I'll pick up on these signals. No, you can do it. Huh? You just don't know it yet. What's he talking about? But you will. Soon. Almost forgot. One more thing. About this case. You should know. I haven't told the truth to anyone yet. Oh, ah! I knew it! I have my reasons, of course. Else I'll be revealed. And Apollo, I need you to be there defending me. I need your power. My, power? I had no idea my cords of steel were that special. It's time. The real trial begins now. Do your best.